a good judgment, but still one has to kind of wait for
the court judgment, bench.
For some more time for the Supreme Court to respond on the judgment.
It will happen. It will happen.
I mean, it will happen. How far the BJP willing to take?
No, Mishra report is based on BJP feedback. Mishra won't give any report contrary to feedback from BJP. It's quite clear. Yeah. It's a master stroke used by BJP, Modi ji actually, I'm telling you. Not BJP,
Okay.
Modi ji.
Okay.
But let us discuss later after court judgment. We'll discuss, not now.
Yeah, sure, sir. Sure.
Sir, if I may introduce today's speaker, Dr. Gundumeda Sambaya. Dr. Surapalli Sujatha will join us after some time, sir. I would request, I will start with your introduction, sir. After that, I would like you to continue with the talk. And today's moderator would be Dr. Suresh, Assistant Professor, Geetham University. Good evening, everyone. Today we have Dr. Sambaya Gundumeda. He holds degrees in political science from Andhra Layla College, Vijayawada, University of Hyderabad, and School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. He has been visiting at Charles Wallace Visiting Fellow in the Institute of Advanced Sciences in Humanities at University of Edinburgh. He's also been a visiting associate fellow at Center for the Study of Developing Studies, New Delhi, and a fellow associate professor at Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, New Delhi from 2015 to 17. So, Dr. Sambaya writes both in English and Telugu and has published widely that include books, research papers, book chapters, essay in learned journals. He has been with the School of Policy and Governance at Azim Premji University since July 2014. Now, I would request Sir to take over.
Thank you very much. It's so nice to see my teacher, Professor Arunkumar Patnaik. Thank you, sir, for joining. A wonderful gesture. I hope that at the end of the talk, we'll have more insights from you. It was wonderful. Thank you guys also for the opportunity. This is my second lecture in the DSU platform. I didn't expect that you would call me so soon, but it's so nice. But anyway, the time given to me is also like 2 days, to reflect upon the judgment, so quick. Whatever that my discussions, it is at a preliminary level. It's not sort of thorough, not based upon thorough reading. I require some more time. So these are my preliminary understanding and observations of judgment. Okay, so we all know that the Dandora movement and then its argument. Based on that, based on Justice Ramchandra's commission report, that Andhra Pradesh government, the United Andhra Pradesh government has came out with a GO that categorized the scheduled castes reservations, not the reservations basically, but that order was quashed at the Supreme Court, in 2005 through this E.V. Chinnaya and then was the state of Andhra Pradesh. Before Andhra Pradesh actually made this order, from 1976 onwards, actually early 70s, later 70s, Punjab, Haryana, they had categorization was in place. And that actually the E.V. Chinnaya's verdict actually affected Punjab, Haryana order. So now after this E.V. Chinnaya's judgment, then obviously they came up with something else. So with a circular, they provided out of this seats reserved for scheduled castes, 50% of the vacancies, they offered to Balmikis and Majbi Sikhs. So, and then this circular was struck down by a division bench of the Punjab and Haryana court. The same was, basically the Supreme Court also actually dismissed that circular. Then the Punjab Act was notified, Section 4 provision, Section 4 and 5 of the Punjab Act made a similar provision, in tune with the, more or less with the same system arrangement actually. And again, it was struck down that 50% of the vacancies of the quota reserved for scheduled castes in direct recruitment shall be offered to Balmikis and Mazhabi Sikhs, subject to their availability. I mean, they changed these certain wordings here and there, but more or less the same arrangement basically. Then what happened? Then of course, it was again, challenged in Supreme Court of India. The High Court. High Court actually, High Court agreed with the circular, but then it referred to Supreme Court, and so this is where the argument actually. So now whoever are contending, arguing against or in favor, they have to base their arguments, from E.V. Chennaiah. So you would see that, in the first part of the judgment, one would, if someone has kind of read the judgment, one would know that, first of all, the arguments and counter arguments. These arguments and counter arguments were sort of, based around the E.V. Chennaiah's, judgment. Now, so I'm going to kind of present few arguments that were in support of E.V. Chennaiah. That means against Punjab, order circular. So one of the argument is that the Parliament alone has the power to exclude caste lists in a schedule. The argument, if you see that, there is in the subclassification, there is no exclusion or inclusion of any caste. It doesn't. But then they say that this it has kind of excluded certain scheduled castes. So then that was kind of one of the arguments placed by Sanjay Har Hegde, supporting E.V. Chennaiah's then. Then he also made another point that in Indira
Sani.
Indira Sani case, the subclassification was limited to socially and educationally backward classes. So the backward classes is a quote unquote. So it was observed that none of its observations would apply to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. What they said, like the Indira Sahni judgment, it's only exclusively of the OBC backward classes category. It doesn't really apply. I mean, because Indira Sahni judgment actually approves the subclassification. So from that point, what they said, the Hegde, Sanjay Hegde, he said, it doesn't really apply to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. Then there is another argument forward by N.M. Thomas. It was held that scheduled castes and scheduled tribes are backward classes. No subclassification can be made. The exclusion from the list is prerogative of the Parliament. I mean, basically the earlier argument that it's list exclusion and inclusion. It's the state governments have no authority over the list. It cannot you would see that in the course of the discussion, that you would see that the word time and again mentioned tinkering with the list. So the object of Article 341, Sec Clause 1 is to provide additional protection to the members of the scheduled caste having regard to the economic and educational backwardness from which they suffer. So in the presidential order, even the court cannot make any alteration. So, they made it a sanctimonial, like as if it's untouchable. You cannot touch, even the court cannot make any alteration. So, permissible to determine whether or not some particular community fails within the list or outside. So they also drawn from state of Maharashtra versus Milind others in 2001. judgment also. So then the another argument is that, of course, it is kind of whatever the earlier arrangement, but then this is the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. It's a legal fiction. It's kind of created under Article 341, and so one should not sort of if changing it in any manner would be constitutionally invalid, or it goes against this Article 341. Okay, then there's a difference between scheduled castes and other backward classes. So again, drawing from Indira Asani case, the scheduled castes are untouchables as held in Journal Singh. The Hindus are divided into two classes, the touchables and the untouchables, basically. Then the term depressed classes was replaced by scheduled castes under the Government of India Act in 1935. The special treatment is given to the scheduled caste due to untouchability with which they suffer. It is not open to the parliament or legislature of states to make classification interstate scheduled caste, scheduled tribes once they are included in the schedule. So, the another argument, even, at least they were given some concession to the parliament that at least parliament actually can kind of make adjustment in the sense like exclusion, inclusion of the certain castes from the presidential list. But there's another argument that forwarded is that once that's constructed or once it's kind of worked out, there's not even the parliament, legislative states can make any classification. That's their argument. Then of course, there's also other arguments. Probably you would know that this scheduled castes or scheduled tribes are kind of sort of a homogeneous category that one cannot kind of so there won't be any difference between them in the sense like there is no caste at all. They're all sort of one group of people without caste. That's Justice Hegde's argument in E.V. Chinnaya's case. So the arguments actually goes like this. Then similar arguments basically homogeneous of a category tinkering with the list and then there won't be any difference, and then it is actually it goes against the constitutional validity and so on, violates Article 341 and then other articles. Then I would like to kind of present 2 or 3 arguments in favor of the subclassification basically. So the first argument is that the decision in E.V. Chinnaya erroneously proceeded on the premise that affirmative action taken by the states by giving preference to certain scheduled castes under Article 16, Provision 4 or Clause 4 tinkers with the president's list under Article 341. Merely giving of preference does not tinker. The counter argument. Merely giving preference. So in the list, once you classify, some people were given 15% and some other people are given another remaining 15%. So it's sort of no preference, right? So merely giving preference does not tinker, rearrange, subclassify, disturb, or interface with the list in any manner whatsoever, since there is no inclusion or exclusion. Obviously, they are not kind of including other castes or excluding other castes. It's like the sort of rearrangement, restructuring the distribution of reservations, in the sense like preference given to the lowest of the low, marginalized among the marginalized, basically. So the Punjab Act has been enacted under Article 16, and then Clause 1, and Article 16 and then Clause 4, read with Article 245 and 246. These are constitutional provisions. So in justification of their arguments, they are trying to kind of draw their ideas or justification from various articles around within the Constitution. Then there's another argument that the court in E.V. Chennaya erred incorrectly, interpreting the majority ratio in Indira Sani on the question of subclassification, that among us the backward, there may be some more backward. And when a state chooses to make such classification, it would be permissible in law. So unequally in the majority, it was held that, the majority judges in Indira Sani case, they held that backward classes can be classified into more backward and less backward classes. The scheduled castes and scheduled tribes fall within the backward classes. And if you look at this argument that when in earlier argument that against the E.V. Chennaya's case, that backward classes merely referring to this what we are calling other backward classes. It does not sort of in its ambit, it does not include scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, right? But whereas they are saying that it's kind of the term backward classes kind of has a wider ambit. It actually includes in its territory. Then there is no warrant for the submission that there cannot be a classification with the scheduled caste. Nowhere it is mentioned that scheduled caste should not be classified. Obviously, we don't find that this is a sanctimonial that should not be once they are scheduled as a scheduled caste should not be touched. There's no way. It's kind of it's allowed when through the president's list. When it's allowed to kind of include and then exclude, that means this is not a sacred, this is not a sort of holy entity, holy quote unquote. It can be kind of reworked, rearranged, and then some castes can be taken out, some castes can be kind of as and when there's a requirement, because the society is not going to be continuously remain forever, the way our ancestors, the way our fathers, lived, and then the way we are living, and then our children would not be living. And so, change is a constant phenomenon. And so accordingly, the constitutional values and then the constitutional provisions need to be changed and then strengthened, owing to certain moral values and then the constitutional philosophy, liberal philosophy, I would say that. So, yeah. Then there's also, Article 16, Clause 4 covers all backward classes, including scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. The expression used in article, this is sort of taking forward the earlier argument that was made, that the expression used in Article 16, Clause 4 is any backward class of citizens. So sort of any is the kind of keyword here. The expression not adequately represented covers all socially and educationally backward classes who, on account of their backwardness, or inadequately represented in the state services. So, obviously, any is the key. As I said, when you say that any backward classes is not exclusively to this, the OBC, that it also includes the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. If you kind of look at Constitutional Assembly debates, actually, to refer to these communities like the depressed classes, backward classes, these phraseology has been kind of deployed rather than of course whereas and when they require to use, they specifically mentioned the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe. Otherwise, to talk generally, they refer this scheduled backward classes actually. Then the preferential treatment is a facet of equality under Article 14. Any enactment by the state giving preference to more backward suggests the backward fulfills the object of Article 16 clause provision 4. So 9 judges in Indira Sani held that, 6 out of 9 judges in Indira Sani held that Article 16 clause 4 is not an exception to Article 16, Clause 1, the preferential treatment given to certain scheduled castes, scheduled tribes does not violate Article 14. Those people who are arguing against the subclassification, they are saying that it's actually goes against the Article 14, the fundamental equality, right to equality, Article 14. So then, what they're saying that the proponents, it intends to provide a proportional equality. So one has to kind of read the idea of equality differently, right? So when we say that both men and women are kind of equal, equal in certain contexts, but then also one has to take the specific context too, where they are discriminated, certain context too. Then the classification is based on intelligible differentia. The differentia bears a reasonable nexus with the object, which is sought to be achieved of equitable representation of all scheduled castes in the government services. So basically the main objective is kind of to give some sort of representation to all the scheduled castes, since in earlier frame of the distribution it is not worked out or achieved, and so let's kind of rearrange it so that everyone will have some shared space in the government services. So the specific reservations are required to bring about real equality. So the idea of equality is kind of sort of repositioned with the idea of real equality of opportunity between unequals and must be ensured by the state. Then a new concept has been applied by the Supreme Court to scheduled castes also. While considering the Indira Sahni in a recent judgment by Supreme Court in Jarnail Singh versus others, Lakshmi Narayan and Gupta others, in 2018, it was held that object of Article 16, Clause 4 is to ensure that all backward classes march forward hand in hand, and that will not be possible if only a selective few get selected in all the coveted services of the government. It was opined that the application of the creamy layer concept to Article 341 and 342 does not tinker with the presidential list. So they have sort of brought out so many arguments in favor of subclassification, and then arguing against this the senseless arguments like placed in E.V. Chennaya's case. So it was also argued that the decision in E.V. Chennaya's is contrary to the other binding judgments such as K.C. Vasant Kumar and others versus State of Karnataka. Then there are several, Balaji versus State of Mysore, Indira Sahni, there's several, So it was held that subclassification between backward and more backward classes is necessary to help more backward classes. So in E.V. Chennaya's, the decision in the state of Kerala and others, Thomas, down in N.M. Thomas, that there could be no objection to further classification within a class. Men are born different, and some sort of differential treatment is required to achieve proportional equality. So if you kind of look at this equality to real equality, at least the proportional equality, these are the terms that they came up with. So in case it is assumed that all castes are homogeneous by virtue of being in the list within Article 341, it is only addition or deletion of any caste in the list would be impermissible as held by the Constitution Bench in the state of Maharashtra. Now, but it says that it is permissible for the state to give preferential treatment within the list based on the comparative backwardness. I think this is the key point here. One can kind of give preference to certain castes within the list based on this comparative backwardness of any class. There's nothing in Article 341 which prohibits the same. Article 341 does not take away the power of the state under Article 16, provision 4 to make provisions for giving preference. Such preferential treatment is not only permissible but necessary to bring equality. So how does one kind of achieve equality? They must do something about it, right? So in any case, the decision in E.V. Chennaya, having been rendered by a coordinate bench of 5 judges, to be referred to a large bench for reconsideration, as the question of interpretation of various provisions of the Constitution involves the larger public interest and the decision is contrary to earlier decisions. It is appropriate to refer to a larger bench to settle the law. So the arguments actually goes on like this. So both in favor and then against the subclassification, especially they have kind of the starting point is E.V. Chennaya's argument. Now let me look at how Justice Arun Mishra and then his co-judges actually looked into this. So I'm going to kind of refer these 3 key points here in the judgment. Then we can kind of open up for discussion. So on the question, if you kind of recollect, one of the major argument against this subclassification is that scheduled castes and scheduled tribes are kind of homogeneous communities, basically, right? And so the subdivision should not be exercised. Now, in E.V. Chennaya's judgment, the Supreme Court held, although the court, I'm referring to this Indira Sahni case, the subclassification of the other backward communities as backward and more backward based on their comparative underdevelopment was permitted. But this principle of subclassification of other backward classes can be applied as a precedent. It should not be applied as a precedent's law for subclassification or subgrouping of scheduled castes in the presidential list, because that very judgment itself has a specifically held that the subdivision of other backward classes is not applicable to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. This is one of the argument. So in support of this argument, the court has stated further that the conglomeration of a caste given in the presidential order should be considered as representing as a class as a whole. Now, the court went on to say that the very idea of placing different castes or tribes or groups or part thereof in a state as a conglomeration by way of deeming definition clearly suggests that they are not to be subdivided or subclassified further. If a class within a class of members of the scheduled caste is created, the same would amount to tinkering with the. I'm actually referring to this how the logic has been built by Justice Arun Mishra and then other judges. And actually, they were taking the argument of the people who are in favor of E.V. Chennaya and then people who are opposing it. Okay. Now, so E.V. Chennaya based their argument against the subclassification from Indira Sahni case. Interestingly, Justice Arun Mishra and his team actually they also quotes from the same judgment, Indira Sahni verdict, to argue in favor of the subclassification. So Justice Arun Mishra referred to Justice P.B. Jeevan Reddy in Indira Sahni verdict. The Justice Reddy categorically noted that there is no or legal bar to a state categorizing the backward classes. Backward classes into backward and more backward. We are not saying it ought to. They never said that it ought to be done. Interestingly, I think we have to kind of read law very critically and then very seriously. They never said that it ought to be done, but they're also concerned with the question if a state makes such a categorization, whether they are concerned about, like, in case if the state makes such a categorization, is it valid or not? So, and for them it is show that no, it's not invalid at all. So that means, like, it's a valid. The state can kind of go ahead and then categorize the scheduled caste categories. So in justification of his point, Justice Jeevan Reddy gives an example of two occupational groups. Interestingly, from Justice Jeevan Reddy comes from Andhra Pradesh. So he draws his ideas from caste system. So he sort of provides examples of goldsmith and Vadiras. Vadira, like the traditional stone cutters in Andhra Pradesh, right? Both included within the other backward classes, Vadiras as well as goldsmith. Now, he argued that no one can deny that goldsmith are far more advanced than the Vadiras. It's common knowledge, right? Like, where are the goldsmith and where are these Vadiras actually? Vadiras on the roads, and then these are the sort of in different locations. If both of them are grouped together, and reservations provided for because they're in the same category, the inevitable result would be that the goldsmith would be take away all the reserved posts, leaving none for Vadiras. It's sort of for various reasons. You would know historically or culturally. So in such a situation, a state may think it advisable to make categorization even among other backward classes, so as ensure that more backward among the backward classes obtain the benefits intended for them. So in order to drive his point, Justice Jeevan Reddy also stated that if scheduled tribes, scheduled castes, and other backward classes are lumped together, if they're kind of brought together, OBCs will take away all the vacancies, leaving scheduled caste and scheduled tribe high and dry. It's for obvious reason. So the same logic also warrants categorization as between more backward and backward. By saying so, he noted that subclassification is not impermissible in law. Now, by quoting Justice Jeevan Reddy and also Justice Chinnappa Reddy in Vasanta Kumar case, Justice Mishra argued that Article 16, Clause 4 permits classification of backward classes into backward and more or most backward classes. However, this classification is permitted only on the basis of the degrees of social backwardness and not on the basis of the economic backwardness alone. So, if backward classes are classified into backward and more or most backward classes, separate quotas of reservation will have to be kept for each such classes. So, they're justifying that, yeah, subclassification, permissible. And then if there are kind of a subclassification like this, then separate quotas has to be earmarked. Will have to be kept for each of the such classes, backward, more backward, lowest backward. How many categories you can kind of work out. In the absence of, I think this is a sort of very, very important. See, in the absence of such separate quota, the reservation will be illegal. I am sort of really, taken by this statement. So, I mean, in the sense, like, if you look at justice argument, that lowest of the low have to be kind of uplifted, right? Seriously, if the reservation benefits not reaching to the people who are at the bottom of the society, it is kind of destroying the very purpose of the reservation system, right? And so I think he went to the extent of saying reservations sort of illegal. I think it's sort of very bold statement. Now, then responding to the argument that in Indira Sani, the question involved was of a Mandal commission regarding other backward classes. So Indira Sani's argument, what they have been saying, that people who are in favor of classification, they always show that Indira Sani case, so subclassification has done, and then other people actually argue that no, this is exclusively for OBCs. No, don't bring in scheduled tribes and scheduled castes. Now, so in response to that, Justice Misra argued that the expression used in Article 16, Clause 4 is any backward class of citizens. Article 16.4 is wider in its ambit than Article 15, Provision 4. The expression class is wider than the caste, and the expression backward class stipulated under Article 16, Provision 4 takes into its ambit scheduled caste and scheduled tribes also. So, like, they're extending, unlike the people who are opponents, they are kind of they are rereading it. They are kind of extending it to all the backward classes. That includes not just OBCs and then SCs, STs also, and all other backward classes, including the socially and educationally backward classes. Now, it's they're going beyond this ambit, in the sense like they're trying to kind of include all those people, not just kind of OBCs, SCs, and STs, and other people who are sort of socially educational backward classes. So, which means like it allows the state to bring out certain policies in favor of these socially economically backward classes. So, in support of this point, Justice Misra quotes Justice Jeevan Reddy, who argues that, quote, in our opinion, too, the words class of citizens not adequately represented in the services under the state would have been a vague and uncertain description. By adding the word backward and by the speeches of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Sri K.M. Munshi, it was made clear that the class of citizens not adequately represented in the services under the state meant not only those classes of citizens who are not so represented on account of their social backwardness. So from this reading, it is clear that social backwardness must be understood from the point of lack of adequate representation in the services under the state. Obviously, like one can provide a great deal of data on that. People who have the representation, people who do not have the representation. So all those commissions, like some in Tamil Nadu, in Karnataka, and then in Andhra Pradesh, in Punjab, one can, even in Uttar Pradesh also, this plenty of data is available. Like who are enjoying the reservations, who are kind of out of that. Now, so turning his attention to the homogeneity question, Justice Mishra asks, what does the concept of caste signify? Now, as a response to this question, Justice Misra quotes Justice Desai in Vasant Kumar verdict. So, he brings Justice Desai's remarks at length. So I'm going to sort of read out. So though caste has been discussed by scholars and jurists, no precise definition of the expression has emerged. A caste is a horizontal segment, division of society spread over a district or a region, or the whole state, and also sometimes outside it. Homo hierarchies is expected to be the central and substantive element of the caste system, which differentiates it from other social systems. The concept of purity and impurity conceptualizes the caste system. And then they goes on to say that there are 4 essential features of the caste system which maintain its homo hierarchicus character, which is the sort of hierarchy, commensality, restrictions on the marriage, and the hereditary occupation. So by saying so, the Justice Mishra argues that it is amply clear that a caste is nothing but a social class, a socially homogeneous class. Like every caste is like no homogeneous class. It is redefining. It is also an occupational grouping, with this difference that its members is hereditary, right? One is born into it. So one is born into a Brahmin category or a Madhika category or a Mala category, a Gounder category, but one is not born into scheduled caste category, right? Its membership is involuntary. So one doesn't have any what you call power in the sense like one has to whether one likes it or not, like one is born into certain caste. That's the idea that Justice Misra trying to kind of tell. Even if one ceases to follow that occupation, still he remained as continued as a member of that group. Obviously, like wherever you are, north, south, or east and west, wherever you go, your caste actually nothing will follow you except your own shadow, and then caste would follow you. Then Justice Misra places caste as the essential aspect in the distribution of reservation rather than the so-called administrative class created by the state. Now, by emphasizing upon the caste, the intention of the justice is clear that they are concerned here with a limited aspect of equality emphasized in Article 16, Provision 4, equality of opportunity in public employment, and a special provision in favor of backward class of citizens to enable them to achieve it. Now, on the same idea, it was even further noted equality postulate not merely legal equality, but also real equality. So, they're sort of referring to this, the idea of equality. So when we talk about equality, it doesn't merely, postulate legal equality. When we say that equality before law, obviously, like, it's not kind of substantive equality, right? Those people who have and then have nots, also like make a difference, like even in front of the law. So equality postulates not merely legal equality, but also real equality. The equality of opportunity has to be distinguished from the equality of results. The various provisions for our Constitution, and particularly those of Article 38, Article 46, 335, 338, and 340, together with the preamble, shows that the right to equality enshrined in our Constitution is not merely a formal right or a vacuous declaration. It is a positive right. I must really salute Justice Aruna Mishra, like he's bringing in the crux. So the what you call it, the essential fundamentality of the constitutional vision. We have to kind of read all these articles together along with the preamble. I think the preamble is the heart of the Constitution. So then the right to equality enshrined in our Constitution is not merely a formal right or a vacuous declaration. It's not sort of declared in a vacant place. It is a positive right, and the state is under an obligation to undertake measure to make it real and effectual. Actually, so state is bounded. Unlike this earlier judgment in Uttarakhand, and then which was upheld by the Supreme Court's recent verdict, that Justice Mishra's argument is something superb. The state has a responsibility, because by the very fact that we are part and parcel of the social contract, right? If you kind of the political subjects, we are part and parcel of the citizens, and then we are lesser citizens. Some citizens are like higher citizens, some citizens are equal citizens, some citizens are lesser citizens. So towards all these people, state has a responsibility. It has a more responsibility towards its lesser citizens, to make equal along with them. So it's not like it's a kind of not a formal right. It's kind of substantive equality. That's sort of aimed at. And the state has an obligation. I think that's a very, very important key point that one has to take into this here. Then, referring to the argument made on behalf of the state of Punjab, wherein it was argued that preferential treatment given by the state to certain scheduled castes and scheduled tribes does not violate Article 14, but brings about proportional equality. The classification made based on intelligible differentia is inter-se backwardness and share in population vis-a-vis proportion of representation in government services. the differentia bears a reasonable nexus with the object sought to be achieved, those who are unequal class of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, right, can be given the benefit of reservation to ensure that the benefits reaches to them as guaranteed under Article 14. So this is a sort of clever, sort of egalitarian way of reading Article 14. One has to go a mere surface, right? One has to go deep into that. So this is where the article has to read. In justification of the argument, again, the court has depended upon its judgment in Marri Chandrasekhar Rao versus Dean Seth GM Medical College, in justification of that Article 14 argument, actually. So the court held, this verdict, Justice Mishra actually and others, this Article 14 argument, actually they take it from Marri Chandrasekhar Rao's verdict, where they quoted it at length. I think it's very essential, fundamental. I'm going to kind of read it in its total. Kindly bear with me for some more time. Then I quote, Article 15 of the Constitution prohibits discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. Article 15 clause 4, however, enjoins that nothing in the article or in clause 2 of Article 29 of the Constitution shall prevent the state from making any special provision of the advancement of any socially and educational backward classes of citizens or for the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes. Therefore, reservation in favor of scheduled tribes or scheduled castes for the purpose of advancement of socially or educationally backward citizens to make them equal with other segments of community in education or job facilities is the mandate of the Constitution. Equality is the dictate of our Constitution. I think this is a remarkable sentence. Equality is the dictate. The Constitution is dictating the government, the state, to achieve that equality. So then Article 14 ensures equality in its fullness to all its citizens, all our citizens. State is enjoined not to deny to any person's equality before law and equal protection of the law within the territory of India. Where it is necessary, however, for the purpose of bringing about real equality of opportunity between those who are unequals, certain reservations are necessary and those should be ensured. Equality under the Constitution is a dynamic concept which must cover every process of equalization. Equality must become a living reality for the large mass of the people. Those who are unequal, in fact, cannot be treated by identical standard. You cannot kind of standard like between men and women, and then Brahmins and then others, Madigas and Malas. Identical standards is not valid here. That may be equality in the law, but it would certainly not be real equality. Existence of equality of opportunity depends not merely on the absence of disability, but on presence of abilities. So it is not simply a matter of legal equality. De jure equality must ultimately find its raison d'etre in de facto equality. The state must therefore resort to compensatory state action for the purpose of making people who are factually unequal in their wealth, education, or social environment equal in specified areas. It is necessary to take into account de facto inequalities which exist in the society and to take affirmative action by way of giving preference and reservation to the socially and economically disadvantaged persons or inflicting handicaps on those more advantageously placed in order to bring about real equality. So, it's even going to say that, impose certainly disadvantages, so as to kind of bring equality, to help the more disadvantaged people. Such affirmative action, though apparently discriminatory, is calculated to produce equality on a broader basis by eliminating de facto inequalities and placing the weaker sections of the community on a footing of equality with a stronger and more powerful sections so that each member of the community, whatever is his birth, occupation, or social position, may enjoy equal opportunity of using to the full his natural endowments of physic, of character, and of intelligence. End of the quote. I suppose in political science classes actually these sort of sections from the judgments need to be read out, thoroughly understand, so that to make connection between this constitutionality and then the reality and then like the judgments, all that. So then moving on to I'm going to kind of take maybe another 5 minutes. I'm going to wind up. Thank you so much for being patience with me. The last 2 points actually on the issue of tinkering with the presidential list. The quote drawing from Journal Singh verdict, where in the Journal Singh's verdict, it was held that the application of creamy layer concept of Article 341 and 342 does not in any way tinker with the presidential list. To quote, the whole object of the reservation is to see that backward class citizens move forward so that they may march hand in hand with other citizens of India on an equal basis. This will not be possible if only the creamy layer within the class bag all the coveted jobs in the public sector and perpetuate themselves, leaving the rest of the class as backward as they always were. This being the case, it is clear that when a court applies the creamy layer principle to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, it does not in any manner tinker with the presidential list under Article 341 and 342 of the Constitution of India. The caste or group or a subgroup named in the said list continues exactly as before, right? It doesn't really change. It's only those persons within that group or subgroups who have come out of the untouchability or backwardness by virtue of belonging to the creamy layer who are excluded from the benefit of reservation. Even these persons who are contained within the group or subgroup in the present list continue to be within those lists. It's only when it comes to the application of the reservation principle under Article 14 and 16 that the creamy layer group is not given the benefit of such a reservation within the subgroup. So it's basically like drawing from a journals or General Singh's verdict, but then by referring to this, the intention is clear. So the court, by saying so, the court asks $1 million question as to how to trickle down the benefit of the reservation benefit to the bottom rung. So it argues that reports indicate that the benefits is being usurped by those castes or classes who have come up and adequately represented. It is clear that caste, occupation, and poverty are interwoven. Caste, occupation, and then the caste, the class in poverty, all sort of interwoven. The state cannot be deprived of the power. When you say that the sanctimonial you should not touch upon, so it's sort of depriving, limiting the state power. The state cannot be deprived of the power to take care of the qualitative and the quantitative difference between the different classes to take ameliorative measures, right? So by saying, in the sense like he's by saying so it's like sort of not warning, but other people telling that what is the real intention, but also to this they're empowering the state, that you are allowed to take ameliorative measures. You are no way limited to improve the lot of the marginalized. Then the question arising of consideration of whether subclassification made or preferential treatment within the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and socially and educational backward classes can be said to be an exercise of inclusion or exclusion. If you remember the earlier argument that it's a kind of tinkering of the list, and then it's actually like it's excluding, including. It's kind of goes against the Constitution. They're referring to this argument. When the castes in the list of scheduled castes, persons are not deprived of the benefit of reservation in totality. All the castes included in the list of scheduled castes are given the benefit of reservation as per reservation in service, but only specific percentage fixed for preferential treatment to a caste class which was not able to enjoy the benefit of reservation on account of their being more backward within the backward classes of scheduled castes. The preferential treatment would not be tantamount to excluding other classes as total deprivation caused to any of the castes in the list of scheduled castes under Article 341, Clause 2. Even learned, lawyer like late Sri Bojja Tarakam also made this point. You're actually not giving, destroying the equality of the constitution. So, mere preferring some castes is not really, destroying their right to equality, right? They're not taking away the preferential treatment power of reservation system from them, right? Caste is nothing but a class. It is the case of classification to provide benefit to all those deprived of the benefit of reservation. Being the poorest of the poor, whether the action based on intelligible differentia to trickle down the benefit can be said to be violative of Article 14 and 16 of the Constitution, and whether subclassification can be said to be an act of inclusion or exclusion, particularly when various reports indicating that there is an inequality inter say various castes included within the list of scheduled castes. So they do not constitute homogeneous class have been relied upon, but basically with all this anthropological data or sociological work or political arguments, it's kind of sort of clear with all the movements also, it's clear that this class is not a homogeneous class.
Hello?
So yeah. Okay. So I guess Sujata Suryapalli garu has come. So I'll sort of wind up. So
yes, she must be checking the audio.
I see. Okay. So based on the report and to give adequate representation to those who continue to remain the most backward of the downtrodden class, the provision containing in certain percentage of preferential treatment subject to availability without depriving others in the list were made. It is sort of constitutionally valid. That's what they're trying to say. Now, finally, the court. I mean, I'm not excited about this, this final argument. The court notes that E.V. Chennaiah is required to be revisited by a large bench. Now, again, I don't know how many years it takes, more so in view of further development and the amendment of the constitution. So, because E.V. Chennaiah has 7 judges, 5 judges now, so which have taken place, we cannot revisit. The court actually arguing that they're saying that we cannot revisit E.V. Chennaiah being bench of this is, I suppose, it's a clever stroke. If Professor Arun Kumar Patnaik's argument, a point if you have to take, it's kind of a master stroke. They're not saying that they're saying that we cannot revisit. We don't have authority, right? So E.V. Chennaiah being bench of coordinate strength. So therefore, these judges make a request to the Honorable Chief Justice to place the matters before a bench comprising of 7 judges or more as considered appropriate action. So it's sort of, if you have to kind of read from a political angle, then it's sort of aiming to or eyeing upon this voters in the coming elections. I mean, in a sense, if you have to, of course, now with this judgment itself, the state governments can actually, can do it, because it's permissible. But then, if there are certain states which are, it appears from the news papers, 17 states are unwilling to kind of take it forward. If that is the case, then revisiting is the only way. So then revisiting, one doesn't know, if the political masters kind of willing, then it might happen within months, or it might kind of happen in another 4 years. But I guess it's bound to kind of happen. But one has to kind of wait and see. By then, one generation of people will be kind of toiling. That's a different case. I I stop here. But thank you very much, for this patient hearing, for the time also. I guess I've taken too long. But anyway, considering that Professor Sujata also just joined, I think I'm okay on that. If if I've taken extra time, please kindly forgive me. Thank you very much, guys.
Yes,
sir,
ma'am.
that's not at all problem. It was very insightful discussion into the topic, sir. I hope ma'am is available. Hello, ma'am. I think there's some technical error with ma'am. I'll just check.
No, she is not available.
Okay, sir. Okay. Now I would request our moderator for the day.
Yeah.
I would request our moderator for the day to carry on with the further discussion and a brief introduction about our moderator, Dr. Suresh. He was a former president, DSU. He did his MPhil and PhD from political science from University of Hyderabad. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Charan, for giving me this opportunity. And to actually, Sam sir has given an elaborate understanding of the previous conditions of EV Chennaya versus Andhra Pradesh judgment, then State of Punjab versus Devendra Singh judgment, and what actually judgment spoke about. So it is very elaborative, and the point which I liked most was his explanation about the necessity of the
Suresh Anna,
yeah. Hello.
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I
Yeah.
just spoke to Sujata ma'am, and she said that she is getting into this.
Sure,
Yeah.
Yeah.
మాట్లాడనివ్వండి సురేష్ ని మాట్లాడనివ్వండి.
Yes, ma'am. You continue, ma'am. He's moderator for today, so he will
Yeah.
take over after you.
No. I think it may be better if you kind of now that you summarize.
Okay, summarize this thing. Yeah. Sure.
Professor
Yes.
Sujata can join.
All right, ma'am. All right, sir.
Sorry.
I think that there is not much to summarize because
Very good.
the
Suresh.
points which you have taken, this equality and caste, and how it is being interpreted by the court was actually an interesting point here, because it was actually missing when the previous judgments spoke about the homogeneity of the castes. They were really underestimating, that undermining the role of the caste and equality, and which you have elaborated now through Arun Mishra. And thank you very much that you have mentioned all the Supreme Court verdicts which the court has mentioned, so which tells that your overall understanding of the concept. Now we'll give it to Dr. Sujata, then I will wind up. Dr. Sujata, please welcome.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm late little, and then Sambay is already has, I think, explained everything. Is there anything left to me? I'm just wondering. Thank you very much. It's a really wonderful discussion at the very crucial time. So what I would like to say, since Sam has explained the arguments in the actual arguments which are happening in the Supreme Court, and I would like to I would go for the where we are differing and why it is becoming so difficult to understand this question, and also the hurdles part of it. So if you see the 2000 when we are in United AP, when the state has taken a decision, and it is up to 2005, it is very visible fact that prior to that, if I take the MRPS categorization movement also, how many castes which we have never imagined and seen has come into the forefront. Dakkali, Mashti or Relli or some of the caste perhaps we have not considered ever. So since I am a grassroots activist, and I can still say that there are castes among scheduled castes have never gone, even a first generation of boy or a girl was not into the school even today. Okay, because of the caste certification issue, and also the kind of nomadic nature in their not having any proper settlements and not having awareness. So it is directly what Chinaya is saying, that we are all homogeneous group, and there is no backwardness, and it is having a categorization is the threat to the constitutional equality concept. But the basis of categorization movement itself is saying that the fruits of the reservation is not spread to the all the castes equally, right? So we have examples that Tamil Nadu is talking about 3% to Arundhati Rs, and Bihar and Punjab, Mahadalits, and there was a commission also. And the another interesting factor is state do not have a right to make any amendments or take a decision. This is also, I would say, against the spirit of the constitution, that we have federal states, which KCR always, go and mention that please give us independence, please give us freedom to spend our own funds. But that actually applies to take the state its own decisions as well, because we are not under one particular. Of course, some powers are under the central and some are with the state, but state definitely have the freedom and should have the freedom to look into the backwardness of the communities and castes, and how they can distribute the benefits of the reservations. What I think now, we are really in a dangerous position, that suddenly 2018 journal case, the creamy layer has come up. When the once, that is also, I would say, the conspiracy again. Once you say creamy layer is coming up, and for the last 2-3 years, if you carefully observe, and there is a whole conspiracy going on to remove the reservations itself. They don't want reservations, and because the Babas have served only 10 years, and it is very long years. So one way it's happening that to remove the reservations and remove the special provisions to the SC, STs, and also we are already seeing that reservations in promotions has become a very serious, and most of the states, they are not implementing. So we are under threat directly by the current governments to not to have any reservation benefits, number one. Number two, where there are reservations, even in without categorization or categorization, they are not filling up the posts in the premier institutions like IITs and most of the science, technological institutions. So that is another battle. And the third, now currently, that if we have to do a multi-layered protest, multi-layered strategic interventions, take strategic interventions, that that Chinnaya is actually doesn't have many points to argue as well. Because if he says homogeneity, the Usha Mehra Commission and all other several examples we have in front, that we are not in homogeneous community because of our backgrounds, because Andhra has a separate, ruled by the Sarkar, and Telangana also ruled by the Nizams, and we have several other, Orissa, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand. The geographically, the distribution is different, and also culturally is different, and politically we are in a different different professions and spaces where our backwardness is defined. So what does constitution says is equality is spread across equity, equality, and entire constitution. That means that Chinnaya says we are homogeneous. Even a blind layman goes to any community, any village. If we don't need big academicians and big commissions, they go to the 10 villages, list out all the 57 groups, which AP has categorized 15% quota in the AP when it was implemented. So that resulted in a very, I'm also one of the product of that. So resulted in a very different way. Even today, that if one goes to the field, we can see that it is not a homogeneous group. Second argument, when they say that it is tinkering with the it is the concept of the equality is disturbed, which is also very foolish argument for me, because the equality, when we say, it should go to the beneficiaries, and when it is not going to the beneficiaries, actually in reverse way, that is not following the constitutional principles. So we are asking for the justice. Unfortunately, I would say that the projection of the categorization, which is even for Mandal Commission, even for OBC, we have seen that how people were against to it. So I'm not surprised, and that we don't get it is not what I say, that unitedly acceptable thing. But definitely, if one understand the caste, if one understand the scheduled caste, if one understand the untouchability as the practice, and if one understand the constitution properly and the Baba Sahib Ambedkar's reservations, why and for what, if we understand these concepts properly, there should not be any obligation, or in fact one should come forward to, as educated, as teachers, we should come forward to bring all those castes into the forefronts and distribute, and we should work towards the distribution of the fruits of the reservations. So it is sometimes I really feel that when welfare state has already gone, when there were no posts, and we are seeking reservation, means that is a very minute benefits that we are asking from the states, which perhaps will not yield anything, because no recruitment anywhere, even in the universities. If you come to the Osmania University or any of our universities, not one professor is or even eligible professors are there. I'm eligible for last 1-2 years, and there are no promotions. And so state is not bothered to bother to implement the government vacancies, which I think in Telangana itself, more than 1 lakh government jobs we were due. So as academicians, as researchers, as students, what we perhaps can do is rewriting the arguments and putting our arguments in a proper way and manner, and giving strength to the ongoing debates, that why the demand of categorization is justifiable, and why the misinterpretation of things. Actually, I want to quote an example that I work on the mining issue and all. So I went to the Delhi. One famous lawyer is there. So in search of that lawyer, I went to Delhi, and I spoke to him. He said some interesting thing. He said that law will not give you what you want, but you have to twist the law the way you want. You got my point. So he says that I was talking about mining and all. He says that I can say there should be mining. I can also say that there should be mining, because that depends on the lawyer. That's why we have lawyers who is taking 2 crores rupees and lawyers taking fee as a fee. So the categorization demand was twisted, and twisted accordingly to the people who are very influential and sitting in the judge. I also met one of the, I don't want to name the senior lawyer in the Supreme Court. He says that he was in fact cautioning that there are serious efforts are going on to remove the reservations, and recruitments in the Supreme Court I said, what is the link of reservations and recruitments in the Supreme Court? he says that earlier there are different streams of the lawyers in the benches, so that you will get the different opinions. If majority of opinion comes, then there is a judgment on the based on the bench. Now they are recruiting the people to have majority of the people to put it in the same bench, so that if 4 people are differing the argument and 5 people on the bench who can give the strength to the whatever argument, then there will be judgment. So now you can understand that Gogoi case, Justice Gogoi, you have seen that how he was immediately, in spite of the conspiracy, he was immediately given a special place. So now we are in a very crucial stage, and we are in a very dangerous zone also, that even the Supreme Courts and the benches and the ideology of replacing the constitution with Manusmriti, that is seriously going on. And in that juncture we are asking for a justice, and there is no unity among scheduled castes. And I wish that we have to, and thinking that our brothers will not, whoever is opposing, they will not get the reservations. In fact, it is not. We all know, we all worked in the categorization demanding, and even the categorization itself is questioned, because one article has immediately come up 4-5 days back that this categorization is not taking care of this caste and some other caste, so it should be rework and redo. So these are the arguments now we should scientifically put together and convince all the people. Like MRPS movement, we have seen not just one, I don't know why reservation of categorization is should always be the Madiga related issue. I never understand, because we are not this the 2000 they have only had a 15% special quota for these most backward castes in the reservation, and we have seen that. And that means you have 85% which is already there for the general people. And it is when you say list of A, B, C, D also, if they want, we can rework again, we can see again and see the backwardness of the caste. We see the landlessness of the people. We can see the first generation who has not entered into the education, and also rework on that. So what I would say is definitely Chinnaya's arguments were flawed and pale and just influenced, and saying 2-3 points, it is not a homogeneous and it is not disturbing the equality, and the states should not have the freedom to implement the reservations. States should have the implement to the reservations, and say what we learned from the dominant caste is, they don't ever come up saying, see, this is wrong. They always say that how they can dilute the dialogue, how they can divert the dialogue. So that is what they are coming up saying, that only under the presidential order you should have. So what is happening by saying under the presidential order you should have, some states in North India, they are not interesting about the categorization because of the backwardness of the different caste, Chamar, Mahar, and there are not much backward people as we are. In fact, in 2000, I think, the first South India Madiga subcaste 3-day workshop I have conducted. Perhaps that is the first and the last with Professor Muttaya, Krupakar, Madiga, and several other people. They said that it was the first time, and we were able to see the backwardness of Kerala, backwardness in the Karnataka, backwardness in the Tamil Nadu. So I think again, we have to start those kind of a dialogue and workshops and come up with the research papers and help our lawyers why it is a justifiable demand. And uh, Baba Saheb Ambedkar gave one document. Now it is in our hands that how we protect our people, that and while working on the ground, and I always think that the vision of Baba Saheb Ambedkar, why he wants scheduled caste, scheduled tribes should be in the hands of the governments. See, if it is not in the hands of governments, imagine where we get the education, which private institution you will get the education, and which institution without reservation you will get recruited. Even today in Hyderabad and elsewhere, you don't get a house, either you are a collector, doctor, or a lawyer, or an actor. You don't get a house for a rent, because if you don't have a government quarters or whatever, and where you would go. Even today, after 70 years, we are talking about this. So we have to see that the constitution is protected, and in the constitution, whatever articles from 16 to 331 were, and the principles which are there in the constitution should be, followed by all the state governments, and we are not going by the twisting and diverting influential tactics. But definitely we are the true Ambedkarites, will go by the scientific arguments and correct basis. And we also can say that we don't need to twist the argument. We only need to present the facts in front of the courts, in front of the people, and also convince our brothers and sisters among the scheduled castes that this is not going to take away anybody's right of reservation, but this is in fact is going to do the justice to the most backward classes. That is everybody's responsibility to see, as an educated person, to see that everybody get fruits out of the benefits of the reservation. Now, I think I'll stop here and can answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. And nice to listen to two great people, and they both have some similarities also. Whereas, Dr. Sambaya, his life and academics are same. His academic engagement for the transformation of Dalit and marginalized lives. He is using both inductive and deductive approaches to realize Baba Saheb's Ambedkar's dreams through Kanshiram's methodology. Whereas Dr. Sujata is both academician and activist. She is one of the dedicated individuals of praxis who is engaging, applying, realizing, and practicing ideas. So she's daring and dashing person to address and to act also. So these two talks actually can be put together. Dr. Sambaya's talk completely reflects on what it is, what the judgment is. And Dr. Sujata is focusing on what ought to be done by the academicians. So both are very serious points. And listening to Dr. Sambaya, there's one point which struck to me, that the judgments, the E.V. Chinnaya versus AP judgment seems to be one of the important judgment, because the judgments before Chinnaya and judgments after Chinnaya, because this particular judgment closes the options, makes Dalits as homogeneous and 341 as sacrosanct, and ignoring the OBC classification.
Yes.
All right. So it is closing all the open options which were prevailing before, right? So the close of E.V. Chinnaya has started closing the opportunities elsewhere in India. So now again, the counter in 2020 is actually opening all the doors, right? So it was very clearly explained by Dr. Sambaya. But there is one point which I would want to reflect to Dr. Sambaya, that, sir, you said you don't know how long it will take to take a decision at the larger bench. But for me, the way they have explained everything, the 16.4 or 341 caste or equality, which you mentioned, if there is no positivity, they would have not been mentioned all these things. So I see positively that there would be some large bench will also reflect positively on the subclassification. And the title actually, rationality of reservations, that when I see this rationality, and there are I feel that reservations, the idea of reservations has come from rationality. And the word rationality reminds me of two people. One is Thomas Hobbes, and the other one is Jesus. Thomas Hobbes said man is selfish, nasty, brutish, but rational. I am making my statements open because my professor Arun Patnaik is here, so that he can correct me if I made any wrong statement on theory. So man is selfish, nasty, brutish, but rational. The latter said, Jesus said, be rational. So the rationality of collective individuals brought security in Hobbes' condition. The rational being can only love their neighbor in Jesus' conditions. So the inference I'm trying to draw here is that rationality will find solutions for the good of the society, right? But there is a typical question comes here. Judgments tells us that. All the judgments tells us that the rationality, every individual and every group claims that they are rational. Now, every judgment will also make a rational judgment. So, in this crucial juncture, now we have to see the rationality within every judgment, and we have to find out whether the judgment is for the good of all, for good of few.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
Yes.
That's where the rationality of reservations.
And rationality should be supported by the documents as well. Should be practicality also. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. E.V. Chinnaiya's, it's also a document, but the document closes the opportunities.
Yes.
The judgment closes the opportunities. So, as Professor Arun Patnaik always tells us, a debate.
Yes.
Debate. So, social justice can be possible by making a debate, engaging with the debate. So, as a consequence, we could see now this judgment. So, with this observations, I make this open. But before that, I think I would ask Professor Patnaik to respond.
Let others ask questions. I will intervene necessary.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. So find the floor. You can either raise your hand or you can type your comments. Then I will ask them. Dr. Shantosh. He said, do we need to rework on ABCD groups, and how in cases both in Telugu states? Yeah, I think he might be asking if it is really classified, how it would be in Telugu states.
Me or Sam?
Ma'am, what do you say?
Me or Sambaya? Who should address? I'm saying.
We'll first come from Sambaya, because you already mentioned in your talk this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sir, you are on mute, sir. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be, be part of a panel with Professor Sujata. I would like to kind of mention this word. There are two people whom I consider my heroes. So one is my grandmother, The second one is Professor Sujata. For obvious reasons, what Suresh has told, it's always a great privilege actually to be with her in the panel. Now, the Andhra situation is different from Telangana situation. I think, the earlier categorization needs to be reworked.
Yes.
It has to be contextualized, and also it has, the ambit has to be kind of, reworked. For example, now categorization also includes women too. Madhika women, Mala women, they are not there. Or, Dakkal women, they are also not there. They are the marginal of the marginalized, right? And so these, I wrote this one in my article actually. But so wherever necessary, actually, like, the urban versus, rural, and the gender needs to be taken into consideration. Yeah. So all that needs to be taken into consideration, because like, the Andhra Dalit situation is a slightly different now, because there's always this argument, right, in Andhra Pradesh that, after this, Telangana bifurcation, Madhikas are less and then the Malas high in number. And so like, the earlier categorization would not be kind of, hold truth. So if that is the case, like take the census properly. Also, take according to, work out the categorization. Categorization is essential, but, rework the modalities, including give a space to women too. If Madhikas are given 7%, give a 3% of quota to Madhika women exclusively. And within that also, there must be some, differentiation between, what you call the rural and the urban also. Wherever the marginality is there, they should be given a preference, right? That's the idea of justice. Thank you. I'll.
Yeah. Dr. Sujata.
Yeah, I agree with Sambaya because I was late for this webinar because I was talking the same thing on the other platform just before this talk. Definitely, because it's a long time, that more than 15 years now, the earlier categorization, and now there were many changes, number one. Number two, also, we are the gender question is very important, and how we one of the demand for Praja Assembly going on in the further from yesterday, because no assembly is talking about the people's issue. Forget about, and people are not talking about general issue and how we expect caste issues or Dalit issues. But gender question, when it comes, that the lifespan of Dalit women, as per one of the studies, Reuters studies says that it is 37 years, and also the atrocities and these questions to be considered, and also some of the castes which I encountered in the last 10 years were terribly disappointed and neglected, and also looking for the help, and they don't have even, they graduates, and we have to see the literacy rate, backwardness, landlessness, and the social, cultural, economic things to be formed and based how we can do justice. But again, I have a fear by saying this, that if again there is a lot of churning happens, if there is lot of discomforts come within the categorization, again the decision will delay and we are going to lose everything. That I mean, people say that they are not in consensus, so that we don't want, we can further delay it. So we are already delayed, and the first generation has come to retirement age. So I don't want the further delay in this. But definitely within a short time frame work, if we are allowed to, that is a must and necessary reworking. If not, in the during course or a process, if states were given the freedom, then also fine.
I think this is Charan. Charan, I think this question is answered. Do you think 4 categories will suffice 59 subcastes?
Yes.
Both the speakers, right? Yeah.
This was some Sandeep, sorry, Vamshi wanted to put this.
Okay, but it's already addressed, right?
Yeah, yes.
So now Shivkumar Dhanya is asking this question: whether we are missing theory of rationality in reservation in case of first generation SCs irrespective of subcastes. So first generation is also another category need to be addressed.
See, this is the creamy layer thing in the first generation or a second generation. Suppose if if you see the reservations and the fourth class employees or the sanitation workers got the more reservation than the higher classes, if you see the reservations and the implementation and all. So in that case, they have seen that as the first generation of people who got the fruits of the reservation. But how do we expect a small employee to be considered as a creamy layer, or whether he will that reservation is able to make his children get good education, or support his son? There should be a rationality in saying that who got the reservation and what is the creamy layer that we are asking. That, see, the basic point I forgot to tell. Reservation is always seen as the poverty elevation program, which is not in spirit or a concept, is the matter. Reservation is the principle of the equality, right? Eradication of poverty is anybody can have a one policy and one program and can be given a subsidy or whatever. So until unless a considerable number of people who availed the first generation of reservations into the equality or moderately fair enough or better enough, we really can't say we should not get into the cycle of creamy layer and first generation. I can understand. We have examples that IPS Praveen Kumar, he always says that I never used reservations for my children. And there are a couple of other officers who always say that. And there are voluntary thing, because who needs a reservation today? People who are really in the bottom of the marginalized sections, among the margins, they need a reservation. And I can ask reservations in the HCU and JNU, but I would probably cannot get into the good education in the village as my counterpart people are getting the private education. I would definitely be end up in the government schools. So that needs lot of debate again, and research, that we should not fall into the trap of first generation is out and this number is out, and we should work on that actually. Sam.
Sir, would you like to
Okay.
respond?
Yeah. So my response is simple. That if first generation versus second generation are competing, then I would prefer a seat goes to the first generation. I am clear on that. So yeah, basically the categorization principle, marginalized of the marginalized. In comparison with the relative comparison, if first generation would be definitely like marginalized in comparison with even the clerk's son also. So their consciousness would be different from the first generation children, right? So I would prefer at any given point of time. Of course, there is a competition between these two, first generation versus the second generation. I would always prefer the first generation. Thank you.
Vamshi is asking, what are your opinions on descheduling of castes as suggested by Lokur Commission?
I won't support descheduling because the caste by birth, and it will remain with one forever until the cradle to the burial ground, and so the caste would not go away. I might not kind of use my reservation, but then I'm still a Madhika or Mala or anything, right? And so descheduling is not going to work out. If individually, if people are kind of giving up reservations, it's fine. But descheduling, I won't support. This argument is kind of a baseless argument. It's kind of a political ploy. Congress, government during this 1969, whatever, just to kind of threaten Dalits. If you don't vote, there is a possibility for descheduling. Like what is that? So by descheduling, would my caste go away? Can you guarantee that? If you guarantee, then I don't mind kind of moving away from that scheduled caste list. So you can always apply this advanced and then backward, then the classification can be done. But then descheduling, I would never suggest. That's my position anyway.
Right. Thank you.
If it is that simple, then we should not have the webinar today like this.
There's someone with name MIA3. Who is that? They can unmute and speak. I think there is a bigger observation written over there. MIA3. Okay. Charan Teja.
It is Mahesh Kongara, it seems.
Hello.
Yeah, Charan Teja, you asked or whatever you.
Yeah. My question was. Hello. Can I?
Yes.
Am I audible?
You're audible. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you have mentioned my question, but my question was that the timing of the judgment. You see, we have seen the amendment that has accommodated the EWS reservations, right? Hello.
Yes, you're audible. Go on.
So the very will, like, as anyway everyone is getting reservations. Okay. Does this classification matters at a point of time when the very idea of the reservation is being ruptured in the name of EWS reservation?
I didn't get the question properly.
No, one point which he was telling what you already said, when reservation is getting restricted or limiting itself and not filling the vacancies, what is the point of extension of reservations is one thing which he mentions. And he's also reminding us the economically backward reservations, sanctioning economically backward reservations and these extensions. He's trying to connect them and asking us to respond.
See, economic backward is, again, I answered, I think, that question. That if you see reservation as the only economic aspect, it looks like a poverty elevation program, but which is not. Reservation has a different purpose, has a social justice concept, has a equality concept, and that is not just economic alone. But even if, as Sambaya said, even if economic moderate or reasonably well enough, if the caste question or inequality is not there and I'm not treated as untouchable or a Dalit, then the question of economic thing comes. Definitely that, see, this overseas scholarship, if you see that, the ceiling has raised to some lakhs. The other day I was talking with people that even a small employee coming into that ceiling, 6 lakhs or some below 10 lakhs. And who will get the overseas scholarship if you say like that? That we have to see the ceiling and the economic aspect. Yeah.
Okay. So, is there anyone?
So with the MI, question, I think I see. Okay, I think we have answered that. So at every stage, the preference needs to be kind of given to the more marginalized. I think that's how modality has to be worked out. If there's a comparison between a Madhika and then Dokali, then one has to prefer Dokali, given his or her background. Like first generation, there are no kind of people who support all that. So one has to comparison has to be made between those two parties. So then the ultimate principle is that justice for the more marginalized. So yeah, I would apply that principle at every stage.
Yeah. Is there anyone want to clarify your questions? Sir. Yes, sir.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Okay. See, what is critical for me for this Arun Mishra committee and the Supreme Court verdict, likely verdict, is the issue of reservation for Dalit Christians and Dalit Muslims. And most probably the non-Christian, non-Muslim, Hindu community, even the, let's say, the Indic communities, if I can call it, the Indic communities may get this reservation. Or what we call rationality reservation. That's actually interesting expression, actually, what Suresh said quite well. But people are skeptical of this reservation for Dalit Christians, Dalit Muslims. Those Arun Mishra committee has very strongly recommended that also given in my view, a higher position for them. They are not called Dalits now. They are now called OBCs. So therefore, they are likely to get reservation under the OBC category. In the process, there are identity questions, but in terms of scale of development, they get a greater share because they are, if they were called SC, they would have got a share of 15%. Now, since they are called OBC, they get a share of 23%. So therefore, the share is higher now in terms of economy of scale. But in terms of identity, that problem is there. And many, I've spoken many Dalit Christian intellectuals, they are a bit unhappy with that. But they have mixed feeling on that. If the reservation issue is come true. Question is, court has to take a view, and if court takes that view, in my view, that will be master stroke. Court supports Arun Mishra committee in toto. I would consider the master stroke, which somebody has quoted. I think that's the master stroke, not other way around. That will be master stroke by point of view for several reasons. I tell you. Historically, I will consider master stroke because there's 70 years of legacy, question hunting Dalit Christians. Ambedkar kept quiet on that issue, despite being told by Dalit Christians of Chennai that they have a reservation issue. Nehru turned other way around, and they were silent even on the reservation for Dalit Sikhs, both Ambedkar and Nehru. Therefore, in my view, there has been a tremendous conspiracy of silence by the egalitarian thinkers like Nehru and Ambedkar. And so therefore, remember, in this context, Dalit Christians, Dalit Muslims are fighting a historic battle. Because in the context of silence maintained by reformist radicals, Dalit Christians have been fighting a epic battle from 1985 onwards, and is pending in Supreme Court for a long time. If Supreme Court now accepts them as OBC, in my view, that will be master stroke, the master stroke. So therefore, going back to Suresh issue, that rationalization of, I think that title, I don't know who has designed, but it's a brilliant title. Actually, I was impressed with the title. You didn't call it subcategorization, you didn't call it ABCD. You used the interesting word, rationalization. Rationalization operates two ways. The idea of homogeneity is also a kind of rationality, which serves the interests of the elites. And the idea of differentiation is one kind of rationality, which serves the interests of the subalterns. Therefore, rationality can operate both ways. Supreme Court has been using, as Sambhya said, rationality versus rationality, is what exactly it is. Supreme Court has been using one kind of reason to justify homogeneity. And that is also a reason which is unreasonable. Marx would say sometimes reason is not available to us in a reasonable form. So in that sense, that reason was unreasonable. Now, if you are using differentiation, through differentiation, you talk about equality. In my view, that's the nature of caste, and therefore, caste as real phenomena is differentiated, segregated, and operations multiply. As Ambedkar said, Moors are acting like Brahmins, towards Matangs or monks. Therefore, it's important for us to de-Brahminize the Dalit communities. And similarly, Madhyas may prolate like Brahmins towards Erukulas. Therefore, find graded inequalities of Brahminism, graded Brahminism, if I can rephrase Ambedkar, practiced by the Dalit communities for historic reasons. Now they won't defend them, and therefore time has come for us to rethink of this, despite having reservation knowledge. But question is, idea is that there has to be unity among Dalit strata, and time has come for us to rethink of not merely desettling reservation, but decastifying society, de-Brahminizing society, entire society. Unless you dismantle caste system, this reservation can't be desettled. As Sambhya said quite rightly, if you do have a caste system, I am prepared to have a reservation. Therefore, that's the right thing. The question is, society is not prepared to. Therefore, we must think of that as well. We must think beyond reservation. We must always think of de-Brahminizing the entire caste society. Caste is caste within us. Is Brahminism within us. That is also blocking our intellectual and the rational progress. There is also blocking differentiation. Differentiation. Erukula is not on par with Madhigas. Madhigas, I've seen, I've done a lot of case studies in Nalgonda. I found one Gandhi Jayanti, Madhigas protested against Erukula, sitting along with them with inter-caste dining party organized by the district collector. Therefore, such resistance are there. Time has come for us to introspect. The caste is about introspect. You can't simply criticize Brahminism outside. You must criticize Brahminism within us. Unless we do that, unless we come out of this, we must demand reservation as a democratic thing, but outright radical thing, to go back to Ambedkar's theme, that we should not get stuck with reservation. We should think of annihilation of caste. That should be the important goal of Dalit movement. That can only unite Dalits across castes. And it will unite Dalits with many non-Dalit section as well. It will unite Dalits with Adivasis. So that's framework of annihilation of caste as a potential to unite a large number of subaltern forces. Time has come for us to get back to that theme and reinvent Wills of Ambedkar for our time. Let us think beyond reservation as well. That's what my submission. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I have got some technical glitch, so I lost all the chat. Raja, can you see any questions over there?
That's it. There's no other question apart from that.
Okay.
Dr. Suresh, there's no question. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Charan. So we can wind up the point. But the one thing which I would like to say that, justice is always a complex topic or complex aspect, because it tells you to provide opportunity to your fellow human being, which was, as Arun sir was saying, that you need to de-Brahminize yourself. So as long as you don't do it, the justice appears to be very complex. The questions, all the questions which you have got, whether ABCD is enough, or what about the first generations, what about the woman, the classification arguments have changed in such a way that it's not from A to B, it's from A to Z. So as long as the society is ready to make further classifications, then only we can. The idea of the classifications would be justified, and Ambedkar would be happy. With these few words, I hand over to the Charan.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh. It was very insightful session from both the speakers, and also very well.
1 second.
Yes.
So, Charan, sorry.
Yes.
Do you have any reflections on Professor Patnaik's points, suggestions? Of course, that's a very serious idea. He put forward. It's an appeal. It's an appeal. While we are fighting against Brahminism, what about the Brahminism within us? I think that's a very serious question. In Telangana, I mean, I know, like, some Madigas actually, like, beaten a Dakkali family, because one Dakkali family amidst of Madigas, and that guy, a poor Dakkali guy, even happened to be a police also. So then so they could not kind of digest the very fact that a Dakkali is living among them, I mean, in his own house. So that is the level of Brahmanism, that's kind of we are into. So I think we need to really think our own values while fighting for justice and then against Brahmanism. I think the injustice that inbuilt in our own behavior pattern or thinking pattern, and then a Brahmanism that we show to our own people. I think that needs to be. Then again, Dr. Suresh, your own Jesus Christ has to kind of bring in here. Like those people who sinned, who does not sin, can throw their stone. I mean, like, what a legitimate position that we will have. They always kind of point out, right? Look, you will yourself discriminate against your own people. How can you say that there's discrimination against you? Like, and everybody says that it's part and parcel of an Indian ethos, psyche, caste system, and all that. So I think while we are asking for justice, while we kind of celebrate the Constitution, Ambedkarism, and all that, I think it's also time for us to reflect our own selves, the kind of Brahmanism that we are living with. I think we have to kind of part the Brahmanism that we have been living with, and then take forward. And you're talking about this, the idea of social justice, right? You said justice is a complex idea. In fact, justice is not complex idea. I would say that we are in fact complex people, because we don't respect the fellow human beings. We don't treat our fellow human beings the way we treat ourselves. If you kind of bring in Jesus Christ here again, like love yourself as you love yourself. Love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? That's the whole idea. I think some of these things needs to be taken into and then practice in our own life, rather than like all the time we have to target, we have to struggle, no doubt about it, but at the same time we also have to kind of pose constantly questions to us also. Posing questions to Brahmins doesn't make us saints, right? There's a devil inside also us. So I think that needs to be kind of tackled while we tackle Brahmanism among the upper castes. That I would say that.
Yes.
But thank you very much, sir, for wonderful insights. Your presence actually made a lot of difference to the discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being part of that.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I would bring Mr. Vamsi's argument, which we are it has come in our discussions the last few days. He's telling this concept with which Brahmanism, which you are speaking as the self goal. If we are not practicing whatever we are seeking, then we are actually kicking our own self goal, so that would actually make us backward rather than forward. Thank you. Thank you, Charan.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh, and also very insightful discussion it has been right from the start. It was just not that the speaker was giving his views, but also the involvement from the audience and the good question and answers session had paved way to a wonderful discussion. I thank our speakers, our moderator, and also all the participants who've been joined right from the start. Thank you all. DSU has been fighting for the social justice, and we shall continue with furthermore discussions on this topic with the judgments coming further. And we're hoping that the categorization will be very well come into force, as we've been waiting for it for quite some time. And as soon as the decision is being made in our states, Telugu states, and will further go on to other parts of India, hoping that we'd be the model state by taking up this issue. And yes, as our earlier speaker said, that this is not just related to MRPS movement alone. It's for every every caste that is involved in this categorization. Thank you one and all. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Good day.